So, this is the so we'll have 2 more weeks of lectures, and then we will have the exam in week 13. Okay, so I'll advise the room closer to the date. But what we will have next week is is we will have I've got a mental blank now. This is terrible. Jane from Jane Cassidy from our faculty will be talking about quality assurance systems in office organization. And then in the last week, we will have Paul Barnett talking about risk, and there's a couple more lectures which I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, doesn't matter. So let's start by just doing a little bit of revision from last week. And also this week's lecture is really more about a kind of case study that covers some of the material from last week in terms of contracts and procurement. And then also about the architect's role during construction. So just to clarify what we were talking about last week, in terms of cost plus projects, uh, cost plus is allowable everywhere, um, providing that one has a specific cost plus construction contract. So that's what I've since found out, and I think I was confusing myself because in terms of the standard progress payment stages that one has in Victoria that's in the Building Contracts Act. That doesn't exist in the ACT and New South Wales, where it's just a recommended thing. So that's the difference between Victoria and New South Wales ACT, is that there's no legislated default progress payments for domestic projects, whereas there is in Victoria. Okay. Um, all right, so moving right along, what we will be talking about today is really these 6 things. All right, so you can see there that the architect and the contract is really something that we've already covered yesterday, and this you can treat more as a case study. So the case study is a renovation that I did in Castlemaine, which was completed in 2014. And so what you see up there on the screen is on the left is the existing house from this lean-to here, which we did some work onto, and this of course is the existing house as well, double-fronted Victorian, and then this sandwich panel extension to the back there. So
Hey John.
yes,
Recording?
yes.
Okay.
Well, yes, I've. Let me just check. Now you freaked me out. Let's see. Yes, it's recording because it says. Yes. Okay. Good.
Usually it flashes like that.
Yeah.
It only flashes when you pick the area you want to record. If you just click on a empty piece of screen, it will just record the whole screen. So let's go back here.
Sorry.
That's all right. Now let me see. Going back up. So with this project, we got 3 prizes. So the first prize here was from a mob called Victorian Restorations, or Victorian Restoration Building Services. So the date you can see on that is the 20th of December 2013, and you can see the second page already, a further page on the right, which has the price of $216,204.69. The second quote we have was by Alan Hughes, and he received his quote on the 31st of January 2014. So really, what that is roughly a few weeks later, and for the price of $160,919. Okay, and so there's a huge variation in the two, which is really like we're talking about $50-something thousand difference between this one and this one. And so what we were doing was we were asking for quotations, so not having a tender, which meant that we had the flexibility to give builders a little bit more time, and also the flexibility to really go and look for other quotes. So because it varied so much, and both of these builders were recommended by an architect that I knew in Castlemaine, I wasn't expecting such a huge difference. But we went to a third builder called the Built Collective, a guy called Carl Albrecht, and you can see the date of the quote there is the 4th of the 4th of the 14th. So that's 4 months later, right? And the amount that you can see down there is $150,859.42. So that is actually quite close. There's only $10,000 separating Warren Hughes' price and Carl Albrecht's price. So in the end, we went with Carl Albrecht, not because he was cheapest, but because he was a builder that was familiar with building with sandwich panels, and not this particular sandwich panel, but he also wasn't afraid of technology. He was really keen on embracing new forms of technology, especially pertaining to sustainability. And it was also good that the prices were under 10% apart from each other. What you might notice, well, what you can't really see here is on the screen is that he's broken his price down into a number of categories: preliminaries, demolition, carpentry, joinery, etc., etc. So that's really just how he's counted all the how he's added everything up. Those are really his kind of major trades. You can see that Warren Hughes hasn't quite has got a whole stack of different items as well. And in fact, Victorian Restorations Building Services had really pages and pages of it, so really comprehensive. What was annoying was that when I rang Victorian Building Services and Restorations, they basically said, "Oh, so a bit high. Can we quote again?" I'm like, you did this around for 5 months, and then now you want to quote again because you didn't think anyone else would quote as low as you did. So I said no. So I said, we're going to go with someone else, because basically it seems like you didn't really want the job, so you jacked up all the prices. And thinking that he's going to swear at me, and instead he said back, "Yeah, well, we didn't want the job at that time, and now we do." It's like, that's a bit late now, isn't it, to change your mind once you've got something out in writing. So our kind of very informal procurement method ended up with us choosing Built Collective, and so we went to the contract, and what we needed to decide upon was whether we were going to follow this payment stages, the typical payment stages according to the Domestic Building Contracts Act of Victoria, which are for all of those stages there, and you can see there that there is a limit on the amount of deposit on the left, which is 5% for any contract price that is more than 20,000, or 10% if it's less than 20,000. So obviously we're more than 20,000, so that determines our deposit. And then there's a series of definitions in this act, in this piece of legislation, as to what each of these stages mean. And really, this is a way of protecting the client, because as a default position, it is something that has been agreed upon that is fair for everybody. You don't need to follow it if you don't want to follow it. What tends to happen is that the stages which you can see down here can actually be amended, be broken down further depending on the project itself. And I think I mentioned last week that smaller builders tend to load up the front more because they don't want to pass on the cost of running an overdraft to not have the money to do the project in the beginning. So what you can see here is in the actual contract itself, and I'll load all this stuff up onto the canvas. What you can see here is that we've in Schedule 3 that we've actually crossed out this standard construction stages, and this is the one we would have gone for, and we've actually done our own stages here. So the way that works basically is that Carl tells us how he would like to do his stages, and then I take it to the client and say this is what it means, and then the client has to agree. I mean, I also have to understand what's going on. So in this case, you can see that the demolition and subfloor stage is 35%, which is quite a big stage. So at the end of the second stage, you've paid 40% of the cost of the building, whereas in the normal schedule here, you've got 10% for base stage plus your 5% deposit, which would mean 15%. So really, what Carl was doing was charging us how many percent more? If like 30% more, right? Is that right? So 40% minus 15%. So that's 25% more up front. So I said to Carl, this is a lot. What are we going to do about it? Is there any way we can reduce this? Because I feel a bit nervous about it. So he said, well, you're protected by the home warranty insurance, which is mandatory for all domestic projects in Victoria. And if anything happens to me, then you can claim on the insurance to get the project done in case I'm run over by a bus. But if you don't like it, what we can do is I can go to the bank and say, give me a facility to finance this amount, so that they will actually then provide me with the 25% money that I need to get this project going, and then I'll just pass on the cost to you. So I got the cost of this financial facility and put it to the client. The client was a bit tight, and the client decided to take the risk with paying more upfront and not actually having to pay more overall to service to pay for the builder's overdraft. So it's a calculated risk on the part of the client once they were informed as to what was going on. Now, so what the contract we decided upon was the HIA Victorian Alterations, Additions and Renovations contract, for which we talked a little bit about last week, and apart from the progress payments, what that also has is the Schedule 2, which is the list of prime cost items and provisional sums. So what those things are is they are both allowances, either things that we know that what we want, and we put it in the contract so the builder can deal with it, such as the supply and install of the water tank there, which is $5,750, or allowances, and those are prime cost items, or allowances where we haven't yet specified everything, but we want the cost of those things to go in. So you can see on the bottom there, shower screens, door hardware, floor tiles, tri-deck panels, they were the sandwich panels, the SIBS panels for the floor and interior walls, light fittings, etc. So the builder then allows all of this stuff into the price, and then also adds his margin onto it, so that the client doesn't have to deal with it. The builder should charge an allowance to deal with things that the client has arranged outside, so that they can be responsible for it. But also it's fair because they have to do all the coordination to make sure everything turns up on site and on time. So really, what we then have is the main part of these things is really all the schedules 1 to 6, which are the things that need to be filled in, and then there's all the various clauses of the contract, which are standard clauses, and you can agree to leave them in or to take them out as necessary just by signing or initialing the bottoms of the pages where you do take them out. And then here's another page, but this is the particulars of the contract. I think is what is known as is the first part of it before Schedule 1, as you can see on the top. So really, in the particulars, what we have there is the signatories or the parties to the contract. So you can see it's the clients up the top. And by the way, the clients given me permission to use these documents for this class. She's an academic at La Trobe Uni in Bendigo in urban planning. Just in case you're wondering what her name is doing there. So you've got the name of the owner, the name of the builder, what the building works involve, who prepared the drawings, and who the bank is. So you can actually see who the lending body is down there. Also very important, the insurer is actually, the builder's insurer is actually, or the project, the construction insurance is actually listed here, and the construction insurance is actually listed in the name of the homeowner, of the proprietor or the client, what the land is, and then everything is signed off and witnessed. So this is I suppose a practical example or real example of actually what happens on that front. Schedule 1, you start to get into the details as to what's required of the project. So Schedule 1 really is about the period and the price. So you note that there is no starting date on here, but up the top there, Carl has actually said 106 days, which includes some days for wet weather and weekends and etc. etc. And so how that works is that essentially once the building permit has been issued, the building approval has been issued, the client and the builder then agree as to what day the builder is going to take possession of the site from the client, and then that day is recorded down formally but elsewhere, not in the contract. Also in there is the price including GST, which you can see down the bottom, and also what the amount of the deposit was, and the penalties and so on and so forth. Important thing here is I'm just noticing this is really small, isn't it? Can't read it, right? Okay, so on this page here, on page 8 in this schedule, it's really the agreed damages for late progress payments, which is 15% per annum. So essentially, if the client is late with the payment, then the builder can charge them 15% per annum pro rata to the period that they're late. And the agreed damages for late completion of building works is $300 a week, which to the client. So essentially, that would cover the client's rental in where they were living outside of the actual property. And then also, so that's agreed damages for late completion of building works, and then there's also agreed damages for delays, right? So that means that non-approved delays, if you like, because obviously if the builder is just dragging their feet, then that's not a valid delay. But if it was raining for weeks, then that would actually be a valid delay. I did mention last week that the HIA contract does not have a provision for the architect to be the contract administrator. So I've basically written in a special clause here that for the purpose of the administration of this contract, John Ting Architects shall act as the agent of the owner. All communications with regards to this contract, including progress claims, shall be between the builder and John Ting Architect only. And then I've listed my details there. Refer all ambiguities, discrepancies, and questions with regards to the building documents to John Ting Architect prior to commencement of work. So I don't know whether this is going to create any arguments between Richard Choi's siblings, but basically it's pretty clear that everything has to go through me. Or through my firm, and not and that the builder is not going to have any direct communication with the client without my agreement. So once everything was signed, of course there's a signatures page, but you see down here on every page you get a initial by the builder and by the client, and then by the builder. So once all that is signed, we've got our building approval. The builder decides on the day to start with the agreement of the client. Work starts. Then the next thing we have to do is to assess progress claims in this stage. So in this case, really, it's not a progress claim as I explained it last week. It's really more of an invoice. And the reason why it's not a progress claim is because we're not using a contract that considers it progress claims. Yeah, it's really an invoice, although we're administering it like a progress claim. So what happens is that in Carl's invoice, he's basically got all the different stages listed there as agreed, and then he actually has. He actually just keeps adding to it. So as each stage is complete, he'll put in the full amount there. And then the ones that haven't yet been done are left blank. So you can see that the completion is not yet done. So he's left that blank, and he's only got one of the variations in there. There were quite a few. So he's got the variation for asbestos removal of $690. Which actually ends up with a subtotal, and then he minuses out the amount of money that's already been paid by the clients, which then gives you a net amount that's due plus the GST, and then the invoice is for that amount. So what I then did with this invoice is I then sent it to the client. What I did with this invoice was that I then arranged for a meeting with the builder, and I went and actually did a site inspection to make sure that basically what he was planning for was actually done. And so I went to have a look at it, and let's just have a look again for what he's claiming. So really, what he's claiming is the internal. Is the lock-up stage and the internal fit-out stage. So I needed actually to go on site physically to make sure that all the doors could lock up for the lock-up stage, and to make sure that all the internal fittings were fitted out, such as the lights and the doors and the floor finish, and then also to make sure that things like the appliances were fitted in, the power points were fitted off, and etc. etc. So they were ahead of schedule, so they'd even managed to install some of the client's fittings that the client had asked the builder to put in, as opposed to being part of the contract. So needless to say, he's a really good builder. He was a really good builder, really engaged. And what happened then was that there were a few small things that needed to be done, all of which were listed down here. But none of this was enough for me to not certify the claim that he had put in, the invoice that he had put in. So this list of things here very much is just stuff that still needs to be done, but all the other stuff had already been done. So all this stuff was really about things that need to be done before the next stage. And of course, if anything from the previous stages that he was billing for had not been done, I would wait for that to be done before I would certify the claim. Because what I then did was to produce a progress certificate which certifies that the work has been, that the claim work, the invoice has been completed according to the contract, and that payment can be arranged by the client. So I would then send this certificate with the invoice to the client. The client would then send it to the bank, and then the bank would then take their sweet time to actually release the money to the client, who then transfer it to the builder. So some of these processes can be incredibly tortuous. And so when one is dealing with payment periods, one has to take all this stuff into account. Yeah, because we specifically left a 2-week payment terms of 2 weeks to allow for all this to happen. So essentially, the builder would tell me when he was going to send me an invoice. We would make an appointment for the day after the invoice was sent in for me to go up to Castlemaine from Melbourne to inspect the thing. I would do my inspection, get back to Melbourne, do the certificate, send it off with the invoice to the client. So really, we would get everything done within 2 days, or within a day of the invoice being issued. And still, the Bendigo Bank would take 11 to 12 days to actually release the money to the client, and then the client would then transfer it to the builder, which would take another 2 days. So really, really cutting short there. So next time I'd probably say 3 weeks, and just get the builder to charge us the overdraft to hang on to that. But these claims are very specific and very formal. So they say that 100% of the stage claim has been completed. They tell us what the stages are. They tell us who is claiming it, and what the contract sum is, and so on and so forth. And that I actually explicitly write here that I hereby certify on the 26th of March 2015, the builder has completed 100% of the stages claimed according to the stage of works, blah, 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 blah. And then I sign it off. Just for information for the client, I do down the bottom talk about the existing claims that have already been settled, and I also keep an Excel spreadsheet which I similar to the one that I showed you last week. Interesting thing here is because it was a renovation of a 19th century Victorian building, you can see that there's the list of variations here. There's variation 1 to variation 22. Okay, but despite all of these variations, I suggested that the client keep a contingency sum of 15%, and the variations ended up being about 10%. So they're small and fiddly, but they're not large amounts, which was good. Now, so the extensions of time is also a kind of variation, because we had some bad weather that was added to it. But I guess the clearest indication of that was really when we demolished the back of the house. We found that there was hardly any stumps holding up the floor at the back of the house, and the thing started to badly sag, because the thing we had removed was actually holding up the thing at the back. So what we then had to do was to basically have a variation to dig a couple more stump holes, and then to put in a couple of new stumps, so that it would flatten out the floor and actually give it the support that it needed. And you can see here that the variation that he's actually sent out, it's a standard form. Carl used to be a project manager working on school buildings for the Department of Education Victoria. So he's essentially got all these standard documents that he's using, which are good because they have all the standard things that one should have in a variation request. So you can see here that it's got temporary support and leveling of building, digging around the base of the stumps, filled with mass concrete. He's got labor, materials, equipment hire, his margin, and then the amount of the variation, and then the total amount of the variation down the bottom, which is some $1,700. And he signed it, and then he sent it to us, and then you can see the superintendent needs to then sign. So I would then sign it once I had worked out that it was a fair charge. And down here he's put latent conditions, which is the reason for the variation. So latent conditions is something that you couldn't know before you started. You know, something that you could only find out when you started taking it apart. For his extensions of time, he uses the same variation form for an extension of time. We had a terrible situation where basically we got a quote from the panel suppliers, and the client agreed to the quote, and we gave the panel suppliers our timeline, and they agreed to everything. And when the builder went to order it, they were out of stock, which then required the builder to request 55 days extension of time over the original period of construction, which was 105 days. Okay, so what do? You know, everything's all set up. You go to the supplier who says they've got everything, and all of a sudden they've got nothing, and basically everyone's delayed by 55 days. So the builder was, I suppose, legally speaking, this was a bit of a bad situation, because I suspect that the builder could have actually charged us liquidated damages for that time, because it was something caused by a supplier that we had nominated. Yeah, but the builder decided not to, because they had plenty more to do, and it was they were all keen to maintain a relationship rather than to punish us whenever they could. So if they had tried to, and they didn't seem to worry too much. I think he had a lot on as well at the time. But if it was a problem for him, I would have just said use another panel. Because there's 3 or 4 of these suppliers around the place, like Brightech and like Kingspan and a few others, asking that do similar panels. But anyway, this luckily it didn't lead to that. So once the thing had been, once the project was pretty much complete, the builder had completed this work. We did a final inspection to make sure everything worked and was not defective. There's always something that's going to go wrong, because these are complicated processes. And according to the contract, he has to come back and fix things within a certain amount of time. So really, before the final, or during the assessment of the final invoice, we take it. We do a big once over of the thing, so that everything is as perfect as it can be when the project is then handed back to the client. Now remember that we're using the HIA contract, which means that there are no retention of sums. So really, it's only the standard construction insurance, domestic warranty insurance, that the client has to claim on if the builder gets run over by a bus or doesn't want to come back or what have you. But the good thing is that, you know, it's the relationship thing. So both the builder and the client were quite active in the Castlemaine community. So I think so everything worked out. So there is an element of relationships that needs to be maintained on that front. And as you can see from this list, it's you're talking about tiny things. You know, they and things things that things that I always check for, because they're often things that people skimp on and people don't check. Item 1.01 over there. Generally, paint top and undersides of all doors. So what they've done is just painted the fronts, backs, and sides of doors, but not the undersides and not the top. And the thing is that with especially with the external doors, they were timber doors. So if you leave your doors open and then it rains, and you get moisture on the top of your doors and they're not painted, the moisture gets soaked in, and you start going down a very painful path. So that's the first thing that I generally check. But by that time, we knew that there were certain things that were not working. So these are all tiny things, you know. Fly screen door is catching plain door and retouch finish. Adjust bolt holes which is misaligned, blah blah blah. So they're all tiny things, but at the end of the process, everything needs to be in perfect working order. Yeah, so that the client can then go and destroy the house themselves. And the client's partner's cat ended up destroying all the aluminium fly screen within about a month after this, which was very annoying. But so this whole process, I think, just to wrap it up, is a very procedural. It's a very procedural. It's a very procedural process, which has a lot of paperwork, and I think the most important thing is that while there's a certain level of trust and relationship that one has to build up with the builder and the client, at the end of the day, it very much comes down to having a very good understanding of the contract as well as the building process, and with an understanding also that these are complex matters that we deal with, where things can and will generally go wrong, because there's so many things that need to happen at the same time. With the builder oversees the whole construction, but we're really talking to 6, 7, 8, 9 subcontractors on a small project like this, and more of a larger project. So you expect things to go wrong, but you also need processes to be able to get all those things rectified. All right. Are there any questions about this lecture, the previous one, or the ones before, or just about anything general, life in general? Yes.
Just that I was just catching up on some notes and noticed that a couple of the, I don't know, maybe you've done now, because it was all weekend, that just a couple of the slides weren't up, and I was wondering from previous weeks. Maybe you've already done it, or if you would mind just double checking.
I'll go and double check. I'll go and double check. Yeah.
I think it was, like not last week, but the week before.
Okay. And I'm going to apologize in advance for these slides, because they for some reason I made this PowerPoint from a PDF, and my notes are all over the place. They're kind of going all of the slides. So I'm going to try and fix the slides before I put it on. But if you get funny looking slides with very small text, that's going to be the reason why. And those of you who haven't yet given me your peer reviews, please get them into me. And I've got most of them by now. The other thing is, those of you who did advanced technology PG last year, there's a table outside my office where you can pick up your assignments if you want to, and if they're not there, then I've got them in my office. Okay, so what happened to Ursula? She's got like about and Rachel, you've got all your 3 or 4 models are there, as well as your drawings ready to be picked up. So now that we've been through the accreditation process, so So come and see me. Does anyone want to do it now, or you want to wait for another day? I'm happy either way.
Are you here on Thursday?
Yes. So send me an email just to let me know about what time you're coming in, and we'll do it. We'll do it then. Okay. Thanks everyone.